The mysterious encounter. It was a calm evening, the kind where everything felt ordinary. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the soft rustling of leaves and the cool breeze breaking the silence. Jake had just finished dinner. A bowl of soup, a slice of bread, and some leftover salad. He sighed, looking at the messy kitchen. Like most nights, he was alone. It had been that way for a while, ever since his parents moved away, leaving him to take care of the house as usual. After finishing his meal, Jake threw the leftovers into the trash can outside, not giving them much thought. He stretched, yawning, as he stepped out onto the porch to get some fresh air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was a peaceful evening. At least, it seemed peaceful. But then he saw something at the edge of his yard. Near the trees stood a figure. It was a girl, no older than 16 or 17. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen before. She was thin, almost frail-looking, with skin that had an unusual pale hue. Her hair was long and black, hanging around her face like a curtain. But what really caught Jake's attention were her eyes. They weren't the usual brown or blue. They were glowing soft, but unmistakably glowing, like two little stars in the dark. The girl didn't move at first. She just stood there staring at him with an expression that seemed to mix hunger and curiosity. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Who was she? Why was she standing there, staring like that? He blinked, unsure whether he was seeing things. Maybe it was just the fading light playing tricks on his eyes. But no, when he looked again, she was still there. "Hey!" Jake called out, taking a hesitant step toward her. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't respond. She simply continued to stare at him, her eyes never leaving his face. It was unsettling, but there was something about her that made Jake feel like he needed to help her. She looked desperate, lost. Her clothes were torn, her body weak. The faintest tremor ran through her limbs, like she hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. Jake's stomach growled. He had just thrown away the last bit of his meal, but something inside told him he needed to offer her food. He wasn't sure why, but it felt like the right thing to do. He turned and went back inside, grabbing the plate of leftover spaghetti that he'd set aside earlier. He hadn't really planned to eat it, but it seemed like fate was pushing him in a direction he hadn't expected. With the plate in hand, he stepped back outside and approached the girl. "Here," he said, holding out the food. I don't know what's going on, but I think you're hungry. You can have this." The girl blinked, her glowing eyes flickering for just a moment. She looked at the food, then back at Jake, and for a second, it seemed like she might speak. But instead, she stepped forward and grabbed the plate with surprising speed. She didn't thank him. She didn't even smile. She just began eating, her hands shaking as she quickly devoured the meal. As though she hadn't eaten in days, Jake stood there, watching her. His mind raced. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why did she look so otherworldly? As the girl ate, she didn't make a sound. Her eyes were locked on the food, not even glancing at Jake. He couldn't help but wonder if something was wrong with her. Her skin was too pale, and her movements were too quick, too unnatural. It was like watching a wild animal more than a person. But the way she devoured the food was almost heartbreaking. She didn't seem to care what it was. As long as she got something in her stomach, the seconds ticked by, and as quickly as she had started, she finished the meal. She didn't leave a single bite behind. Jake wasn't sure what to say next. Should he ask her who she was, where she came from? But before he could open his mouth, the girl abruptly stood up, the empty plate still in her hands. Her eyes shifted to the distance, then back to Jake. For a brief moment, it seemed like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Then Just as quickly as she had appeared, she turned and walked into the darkness, disappearing between the trees without a sound. Jake blinked, feeling an odd mix of confusion and unease. What had just happened? Who was she? Why had she come? To him? And what did she want? He stood frozen for a moment, still trying to process everything. But then a strange feeling settled in his chest, a feeling that something wasn't over yet. This girl, whoever she was, hadn't just come for food. She had come for something else. And Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than he could have imagined. He glanced at the empty plate in his hand. It felt like an offering, but an offering for what? He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. The girl wasn't just an alien, lost and hungry. She had come with a purpose. And whether Jake liked it or not, he had just become part of something far larger than his quiet life. The night stretched on, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. The sky, once peaceful, now seemed darker than before. Somewhere, just out of sight, something was watching. Asterisk the return the next morning felt ... wrong. Jake woke up to an unusual quietness, the kind that makes your skin crawl. The sun was barely rising, casting long, sharp shadows through his bedroom window. He rubbed his eyes and looked around, feeling like something had shifted during the night. As he slowly pulled himself out of bed, his thoughts drifted back to the girl, the strange girl with the glowing eyes, the image of her hungrily devouring. His leftovers was burned into his memory. But it wasn't just the image of her eating that stuck with him. It was the way she had looked at him, the look that lingered. It was almost as if she had been sizing him up, making some sort of decision about him, but he couldn't figure out what that decision was. Shaking off the feeling, he decided to get on with his day. It was probably nothing, just some weird dream, a trick of the mind. But as he stepped outside to grab the morning paper, something caught his eye. At the edge of the yard, standing right where he had seen the girl last night, was ... her. Jake froze. His pulse quickened. His breath caught in his throat. This time, it wasn't just her. There was someone else. A taller figure, an older woman, standing beside the girl. The girl, Lyra as he now thought of her, stood silently, staring at the ground, her head lowered. Her posture was rigid, like she was afraid of something, or someone. The woman beside her, however, was different. Her eyes weren't glowing as Lyra's had been. Instead, they were a piercing, unnatural shade of green, like they had been carved out of glass. Her face was sharp, regal, and cold. She wore a long, flowing cloak, dark and sleek. It seemed to shimmer with an almost metallic sheen. There was something otherworldly about her presence, something powerful and commanding. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He should have run. He should have locked the door and called for help. But he couldn't move. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the woman's cold stare, which now turned toward him. Jake, the woman's voice was smooth, calm, but the words had a chilling weight to them. You have something of mine. Jake's body stiffened. How did she know his name? And what did she mean by something of mine? He took a step back, his mind racing. He wanted to speak, to ask who she was. What was going on, but his voice seemed to have abandoned him. The air around him felt thick, heavy, as though it was pressing down on his chest. Lyra raised her head just slightly, her glowing eyes flickering as she looked at him. There was something in her gaze, something pleading. It was almost as if she was silently begging him to understand, to accept what was happening. The woman, sensing Jake's confusion, took a step forward, her presence more intense with each movement. I am Karel, she said, her voice smooth and commanding. And I am here for a simple request. Jake swallowed hard. What do you want? His voice cracked, his heart racing. This wasn't just some weird coincidence anymore. This was real. Carol's eyes glinted as she looked at him, her lips curling into a small, unreadable smile. You gave my daughter food last night, she said, her voice soft, but with an underlying power that made every word feel heavier. And now you have given. You something we have needed ... for a long time. Jake's mind spun. Wait ... what do you mean? What have I given you? Carol's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. You may not know it yet, but you have invited us in. The bond has already been made. You offered her food ... and in return, you have become part of something much larger than yourself. Jake took a step back, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation. This wasn't about food. It was something else. Something far more dangerous. His stomach twisted in knots. I don't understand, he whispered, his throat dry. What do you want from me? Carol's eyes locked onto his, unblinking. A place to stay, she said simply. A place where we can wait. Wait for the moment when our people need to make their move. The words hung in the air like a threat. A chill crawled up Jake's spine as the realization hit him. This wasn't a request. This was a command. Karel and Lyra weren't just here for food. They were here for something far more important, something far darker. Karel stepped closer, closing the gap between them, her gaze unrelenting. You will give us shelter, she continued, her voice a soft whisper that seemed to echo in his. Mind. And in return, ... we will help you. We will give you knowledge, power. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a drum of uncertainty. What kind of power? What kind of knowledge? But before he could ask, Karel turned and nodded toward Lyra. The girl, who had barely spoken a word, suddenly stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. Please, she said, her tone fragile yet pleading. You don't know what's coming. Jake's breath caught. He wanted to say something, anything to deny what was happening, but it felt like he was trapped. There was no escape, no way out. The moment was already unfolding, and he was powerless to stop it. Give us a place to stay? Jake, Karel said again, her eyes gleaming with a quiet intensity. And you will never be the same again. The words sent a cold shiver down Jake's spine, but deep down, a strange part of him couldn't deny it. He wanted to know more. He wanted to understand what was happening. But as Karel and Lyra stood there, waiting for his answer, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that agreeing to their request might be the worst decision of his life. The offer they can't refuse. Jake sat on the edge of the couch, his mind spinning. The eerie silence in his living room felt oppressive, suffocating. He couldn't shake the image of Karel's cold, piercing eyes, or the way Lyra had looked at him, like a quiet plea for something. He wasn't yet ready to understand. The air was thick, heavy with an unseen tension. Karel and Lyra had come into his house without invitation, their presence like a dark cloud that refused to lift. After their initial conversation, they hadn't said much more. Karel remained the stoic figure she always was, while Lyra stayed. In the background, her eyes constantly watching him, calculating. His heart still raced as he stared at the clock. Hours had passed, but no one had said anything of consequence. Just the unnerving stillness between them. And then, finally, Karel broke the silence. We have not come here simply to ask for shelter, she said, her voice cold, yet wrapped in an undeniable authority. We have come to offer you something. Jake's throat tightened as he looked up at her. An offer? He asked, his voice trembling despite his best effort to stay calm. Karel stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his face. There was something in the way she moved, a fluidity to her every motion that made it clear she was not of this world. Yes, she said softly. An offer, one you would be wise not to refuse. Jake swallowed hard. What kind of offer? He asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Lyra, who had been standing in the corner, watching intently, finally spoke up. "We're not here for just a place to stay, Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But there was an unmistakable force behind it. "You've already given us what we needed, but now we can give you something in return. Something unimaginable." The word hung in the air like a dark promise, its weight pressing down on Jake's chest. He could feel the walls closing in, but curiosity gnawed at him. What could they possibly offer him? What could they give him that would make all of this feel less like a nightmare and more like an opportunity? Karel gave a small, satisfied smile. "You see, Jake," she said, her tone almost like a lullaby, "our people, our race, are not like yours. We have advanced far beyond what your world understands. We have powers that could change the course of your future." Jake's mind reeled. Powers? What was she talking about? Powers that could change his future? What kind of powers? He asked, trying to sound skeptical. Karel's smile widened, and for the first time, there was something almost human in the way she looked at him. "You've seen how my daughter changes, how quickly she has grown strong. But that is nothing compared to what you could achieve. We could make you powerful, Jake. We could make you someone who can shape the world." Jake felt his heart skip. A beat. Shape the world? He echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Karel stepped closer. "We can offer you knowledge secrets that would make you more than you ever dreamed possible. We can show you how to control the very fabric of your reality. You could change everything." For a moment, Jake was silent, his thoughts spinning. This was impossible. No one could offer him that kind of power. It was all too surreal, too unbelievable. Yet, here they were, offering it to him with such cold confidence. His eyes flicked to Lyra, who seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for him to say something, anything. There was a part of Jake that felt drawn to her, an inexplicable connection he couldn't shake. She wasn't just some alien girl who needed food. There was more to her than he had originally realized. What's the catch? Jake finally asked, his voice steadying. "There has to be a catch." Karel's eyes darkened. "There is always a price, Jake," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "But in the end, it will be worth it. The power we offer comes at a cost, yes, but the rewards are infinite. You will never need to fear the world again. You will have the strength to protect yourself, to rule your own destiny." Jake's mind raced. Could he trust them? Could he trust her? He barely knew who they were. They could be lying to him. They could be using him. But what if they weren't? He looked at Karel, at the powerful aura surrounding her, and then at Lyra, whose glowing eyes were now fixed on him with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. There was something about her that made his stomach turn with a strange mixture of fear and desire. What was she offering him, really? And what did it mean for him if he accepted? "You don't have to decide right now," Karel continued, her voice as smooth as velvet. "But know this, the window to accept our offer will not remain open forever. Soon there will be others, others who will not offer you a choice. You will be forced to make a decision. But if you join us now, you will have control over your future. You will be one of the few who can shape the future of this planet, of your species." Jake stood up, his body tense. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, as though the very air around him had become thick with the weight of their words. They weren't just offering him a chance. They were giving him power. They were offering him a place in a world he didn't understand, one that was far beyond his wildest imagination. But at what cost? And why had they come to him? "You don't have to decide now," Karel repeated, her voice cutting through his. Thoughts like a blade. "But you must decide soon, Jake, The offer is yours if you choose to take it. If not, well, things will become much more complicated. Jake felt his heart race. Every instinct told him to walk away, to say no, but a part of him, something deep inside, was tempted. He wanted to know what they knew. He wanted to be more than ordinary Dot. His mind screamed at him to run. But his curiosity, his desire to understand what was happening, kept him rooted to the spot. "You have until tomorrow," Karel said, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling confidence. "Make your choice, Jake." As she turned to leave, followed by Lyra, Jake was left alone in the room, the weight of their offer pressing down on him like a vice. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving him in a silence that felt more dangerous than anything he had ever known. What would he do? Unspoken truths. The night fell with an unsettling calmness, the kind that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jake sat alone in his living room, staring at the clock. It was almost midnight, and the silence was deafening. His mind raced with the choices he had been given and the consequences of them. Karel's offer echoed in his mind like a chant he couldn't shake. Power, control, a future beyond anything you can imagine. But even now, as he sat in the stillness of his own home, the question lingered. What was the price? Jake had tried to sleep, tried to forget everything that had happened that day, but his thoughts were too loud. The more he thought about it, the more the question gnawed at him. What was it they weren't telling him? What did they want from him? The doorbell rang. His heart leaped in his chest. He hadn't been expecting anyone. His eyes flicked to the front door, then back to the clock. It was far too late for a visitor. A chill crept up his spine as he slowly got to his feet, each step heavier than the last. He opened the door without a word, but his breath caught in his throat when he saw who was standing there. Lyra. She was alone. She looked different, now stronger, more confident. Her eyes still glowed with that unsettling light, but there was a certain intensity about her that Jake hadn't noticed before. She wasn't the weak, hungry girl who had appeared on his doorstep a few days ago. There was power in her now. Power that felt like it was growing by the second. Lyra. Jake started, his voice thick with unease. What's going on? What is all of this about? Lyra didn't speak at first. Instead, she stepped inside without asking, moving with a quiet, almost predatory grace. Jake instinctively stepped back, his hand resting on the doorframe as though trying to hold back the storm that was about to break. You shouldn't have opened the door. Jake, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper, yet full of an undeniable authority. But now that you have, I need you to understand something. Her words sent a shiver down his spine. Something was off. This wasn't just a visit. This was important. Lyra turned and walked past him, her eyes flickering with an unreadable emotion. Karel didn't tell you everything, did she? Jake's heart skipped a beat. What did she mean by that? He could feel his palms begin to sweat, his mind racing as he tried to catch up with the direction this conversation was taking. What do you mean? Jake asked, his voice hoarse. Lyra glanced back at him, her gaze piercing, almost sad. There's more to this than just power. More to what Karel wants from you. She paused for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully, before she continued. I didn't ask for this. None of us did. Jake's confusion deepened. What are you talking about? You came here for ... shelter. You said you wanted a place to stay. Lyra shook her head slowly, her expression turning dark. That's what Karel told you, but that's not the full truth. Her eyes met his again, and this time Jake could see a flicker of something dangerous. We didn't come here to live among your kind. We came because we needed something. Something only you can give us. The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. The air around him felt suddenly dense, like he was being suffocated by the weight of her words. He wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but his mind was already spinning with fear and doubt. Lyra stepped closer, and with each step, Jake could feel a strange pull, as though she was drawing him into something that he had no way of escaping. "You've already made the choice, Jake," she said softly, almost lovingly. "You invited us in. But what you don't realize is that by doing so, you've bound yourself to our fate." She paused, letting the gravity of her words sink in. "Karel never told you the true reason we need you." Jake's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? What do you need me for?" Lyra closed her eyes, almost as if bracing herself. When she opened them again, her gaze was filled with a mixture of sadness and regret. "Karel didn't tell you that we're not just passing through your world, Jake," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "We came here because we have nowhere else to go. Our planet ... it's dead." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Dead. The word echoed in Jake's mind, but he couldn't quite wrap his head around it. He stared at her, his mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of what she had just said. "Dead?" he whispered. "What do you mean?" Lyra sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping. "Our world is dying, and Karel ... Her voice faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Karel is here because she believes that your world is the only chance we have. You're part of that chance." Jake's mind spun. "What? How? How am I part of your chance?" Lyra looked at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Because you're the one who opened the door. You're the one who offered us food. That act ... it triggered something. A connection. And now you're bound to us." Jake's pulse quickened. His chest felt tight as the weight of her words crashed down on him. "But I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing. I just ... gave you food." Lyra stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't need to know, Jake. You didn't need to understand. But now you're in this weather. You want to be or not, and you will help us, or your world will burn." The last sentence sent a jolt through Jake's body. He could feel the coldness in her words, something far darker than he had ever imagined. "Help you?" he echoed, his voice barely audible. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, and for a split second, Jake saw something he hadn't expected, a flicker of raw power. And in that moment, he realized this was no longer just about food. It was no longer just about some weird alien encounter. This was about survival. His survival. The survival of his world. "Make your choice, Jake," Lyra said, her voice like ice. "There's no going back now." Asterisk, the shocking revelation. Jake couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his bed, the weight of the past few days pressing on him like a lead blanket. The images of Lyra's glowing eyes, Karel's cold, commanding presence, they all swirled in his mind, refusing to let him rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them standing there, offering him power, but also a price so steep he couldn't fathom it. The truth, the real truth, was becoming clearer with each passing minute. The more Lyra spoke, the more Jake realized that the world he knew, the world of simple routines, of ordinary lives, wasn't real anymore. That world was gone. The truth was something darker, something far beyond anything he could have ever imagined. He had tried to deny it. He had tried to convince himself that he could walk away from all of this, that it was just a dream, a bizarre encounter that would fade with time. But deep down, he knew the truth. There was no escaping it, no running. He had opened a door, and now there was no going back. The doorbell rang, shattering the stillness of the night. Jake sat bolt upright, his heart thundering in his chest. He had been expecting this. He knew what was coming. Still, the dread that washed over him felt almost physical, like a wave crashing against him. He slowly made his way to the door, his body stiff with anxiety. His hands trembled as he gripped the doorknob. He didn't need to look through the peephole to know who was standing outside. Karel and Lyra. Jake opened the door. His breath caught in his throat as he looked up at them. Karel's face was as unreadable as ever, but Lyra looked different. Now, her eyes glowed even brighter than before, a swirling, ethereal light that sent a shiver down his spine. "We need to talk," Karel said, her voice low, a hint of something final in her words. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Jake stepped aside wordlessly, allowing them to enter. The air in his house felt colder, denser, as if the walls themselves were closing in around him. Karel's presence alone seemed to make everything feel heavier. They sat in the living room, and Jake's mind raced, trying to prepare for whatever was coming next. He had learned a lot from their cryptic conversations, but he had never been told the full truth. He could feel it now. There was something more, something Karel hadn't shared with him yet. Lyra sat silently beside her mother, her glowing eyes locked onto Jake with a strange intensity. He could feel the weight of their stare, like they were both trying to push him into making a decision he wasn't ready to make. He wasn't even sure he understood the full consequences of that decision. Karel broke the silence. "You're still struggling with this, aren't you, Jake?" she asked, her tone almost mocking. "You think you can turn your back on what's happening here, but you can't. You've already made your choice." Jake felt a cold rush of fear in his chest. "What do you mean?" "I never agreed to anything. I didn't ask for any of this." Karel's lips curved into a thin smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You think this was all your choice, don't you? That you could walk away at any moment. But the truth is, you're part of something much bigger than yourself. And whether you like it or not, you belong to us now." Jake recoiled, the words hitting him like a punch to the gut. He tried to speak, but his throat felt dry, his voice stuck in his chest. Lyra stood up, her movements so quick and fluid that Jake didn't even have time to react. She walked toward him, her gaze unrelenting. There was something almost predatory in the way she moved now, a quiet power radiating off her that made his heart skip a beat. "You don't understand yet," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying a weight that seemed far beyond her years. "But you will. You're not just some human anymore, Jake. You're part of our world now. And when the time comes, you'll have to choose where your loyalties lie." Jake stared at her, confused, terrified. "Loyalties? To you?" Lyra nodded. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something darker, something he hadn't seen before. "To us," she corrected, her voice tinged with a quiet, almost sad finality. "We didn't come here just for food. We came because we need you, and you will help us." Jake shook his head, his mind reeling. "Help you with what?" Karel's smile deepened, but this time it was colder. "You think we've been hiding the truth from you? No, we've simply been waiting for you to understand. The truth is, Jake... we are not here for shelter. We are here to conquer." The word sent a chill through Jake's spine. "Conquer? What are you talking about?" Karel's eyes glowed, a fierce light that seemed to pierce into Jake's very soul. "Our world is dying. The planet we come from, it's dead. We have no place to go, no future to speak of. But your world... it's perfect. Your technology, your resources, your people, everything we need is here." Jake's breath caught in his throat. "You single quotes you're going to take over?" Lyra's voice was quiet, almost regretful as she spoke. "We don't want to, but we have no choice. Your world is the only one left. And if we don't take it, we'll die." Karel turned her cold gaze to Jake. "You have two choices, Jake. You can join us, and we'll show you a future that's beyond your wildest imagination. Or you can refuse us ... and your world will fall. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, his mind spinning. He had been so naive. All this time, he had thought he could just help them, that it was all about survival. But now, the truth was undeniable. This wasn't just about survival. This was about domination. Karel and Lyra weren't here to ask for shelter. They weren't here for a simple trade. They were here to take what they needed, no matter the cost, and Jake was caught in the middle. Lyra's glowing eyes flickered, a sadness passing through them. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "But there's no going back now." The weight of her words sank in, and Jake knew deep down that the decision he made in the next few moments would change everything. His world, his life, everything was at stake. The question was, which side would he choose? The dark side of the deal. Jake stood at the edge of his backyard, staring into the distant night, his mind in chaos. He could feel it, the heavy, suffocating presence of Karel and Lyra, as if they were watching him from every shadow. His mind raced, but nothing made sense anymore. How had he gone from offering food to a strange, starving girl to standing on the brink of his world's destruction? It was as if the universe itself had flipped, and Jake was no longer in control. He had agreed to shelter them, thinking he was doing the right thing. But now, the truth was crashing down on him. Karel and Lyra weren't just aliens stranded on Earth. They weren't just hungry travelers. They were here for one thing, power, and they were ready to take it by force if they had to. Jake's hands clenched into fists, his pulse racing. He needed answers. He needed to understand how far he had fallen into this nightmare, and if there was any chance of escaping it. He didn't know what he was hoping for. An answer? A solution? Some sign that there was still a way out. But the only thing that greeted him was the cold, empty silence of the backyard. Then a soft sound cut through the stillness, a low hum. It was coming from the trees. Jake turned around quickly, his heart pounding. The air had shifted, becoming unnervingly still, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Then, like a shadow emerging from the dark, Karel appeared, stepping out from the tree line, her figure tall and imposing. Lyra followed closely behind, her glowing eyes piercing the darkness like twin lanterns. Karel's expression was unreadable, but there was something in the air that made Jake feel like he was standing at the edge of a precipice. The time for questions was over. Now it was about the choice. "You're beginning to understand, aren't you?" Karel's voice was soft, but carried the weight of inevitability. The truth of this deal. Jake swallowed, his throat dry. "I don't understand anything anymore. You said you were here for shelter, ... But you want to conquer Earth. You want to destroy everything." Karel's eyes glittered. "We're not here to destroy, Jake. We're here to save our species. Our survival. What happens to your world doesn't concern us unless you make it. You have a choice. Join us, and we will elevate you to power beyond your wildest imagination. Refuse us, and your world falls. You've seen the ships. You know what we are capable of. And yet you still hesitate." Jake's blood ran cold. The ships, he had seen them. In the distance, hovering above the horizon, glowing like a swarm of predatory insects. He had thought they were a warning, a signal. But now he realized they weren't waiting. They were ready. Ready to strike. Lyra stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper, but laced with a chilling certainty. "You have to understand. Jake, your world is fragile. It can't last the way it is. But we can save it. We can make everything better. But you have to stand with us. It's the only way." Jake's heart raced in his chest. He could feel it, the heavy pressure of the decision on him. The choice wasn't just his life anymore. It was everyone's life. He wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong, to refuse them. But something inside him, the same something that had pushed him to offer food to Lyra in the first place, kept him rooted in place, unwilling to walk away. Was it fear? Was it his desire for power? Or was it just the knowledge that, deep down, everything was slipping out of his control? "You'll give us the power we need," Carol continued, stepping closer, her eyes never leaving Jake's face. "And in return, we'll give you the future you deserve. No more weakness, no more limitations. You'll be more than just a human. You'll be a ruler, a king in a new world." Jake's thoughts were a blur. He thought of his life, his ordinary life before all of this. The quiet nights, the simple meals. It felt like a lifetime ago. He thought of his parents, his friends, the world that he had once taken for granted. Would he lose it all if he accepted this offer? Was the price worth it? Lyra stepped forward now, her gaze softer but filled with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. "Jake, ... we don't want to hurt you, but if you refuse us, you'll have no choice but to fight, and you won't win. The decision is yours." Jake looked at her, searching her eyes for any hint of deception, but found none. This wasn't some game. This wasn't about some kind of alien conspiracy to enslave humanity. This was survival. Their survival and his. But what would he become? If he accepted their offer, what kind of man would he be? What kind of world would they create? In that moment, the ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble, and he knew that everything his future, the future of Earth, was hanging by a thread. Suddenly, the world around him seemed to shift, as if time itself had stopped. He saw flashes of images in his mind, images of cities crumbling, of ships descending from the sky, of the lives of billions wiped away in an instant. And then he saw his own face, standing among the stars, powerful and unrecognizable as he. Looked down upon the ashes of what was once Earth. "Make your choice, Jake." Karel's voice rang out in the stillness. "Join us, and you will rise. Or deny us, and watch everything you know burn." The silence was deafening. Jake's pulse hammered in his ears. The air around him crackled with tension, the weight of the decision pressing on him like a 1,000-pound stone. And then, with a shaky breath, he spoke. "I don't know if I can do this." Carol's lips curled into a smile. "You already have, Jake. You've already chosen." Before Jake could react, the sky above seemed to crack open. Their ships lowered, filling the sky with an eerie, glowing light. They were ready. It was no longer a choice between accepting or refusing. It was a choice between survival and everything else. Asterisk the final choice. The world felt like it was closing in around Jake. The air was thick with tension, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like a storm that was about to break. Carol's ships hovered silently in the sky, their menacing presence a constant reminder of the power she held over him. Lyra stood beside her mother, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before, a silent witness to the moment that would decide everything. "Jake," Carol's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. "This is your moment. The choice is yours. Choose to join us, and you will have the power to rule, to shape this world as you see fit. Deny us, and, well, you already know what will happen." Jake's heart pounded in his chest, his mind spinning in a whirlwind of fear, desire, and confusion. He could feel the pull of their words, the promise of power, the promise of control over his own future. It was intoxicating. Everything he had ever wanted was right in front of him. But then there was that other part of him, the part that remembered his life before this all began, the life he had once taken for granted. The quiet nights, the simple comforts, the innocence of a world untouched by such power. Could he really betray that life? Could he really turn his back on everything he knew and loved, just for the chance at something more? His eyes flicked up to the ships in the sky, their dark forms blocking out the stars. They were ready to descend at a moment's notice, to bring about the world-altering change Karel had promised. He could feel it in the air. The moment was here, and there was no escaping it. Lyra stepped forward, her soft voice laced with urgency. Jake, ... We're not asking for your loyalty, she said, her words tinged with something he couldn't quite place: desperation. We're asking for your help. Together, we can make this world better. Together, we can save it. You can't do this alone. Jake's mind reeled. The weight of their offer pressed down on him, suffocating him, and yet there was a flicker of doubt in his chest. How could he help them, knowing what they truly wanted? How could he live with the knowledge that he was part of an invasion? A new world order built on the ashes of his own kind? But deep down, he knew the truth. If he refused them, it wouldn't just be the end of his world. It would be the end of everything. Earth would burn. His life, the lives of everyone he loved, would be consumed by the machines of their power. There would be no future, only darkness. I can't do this, Jake whispered, his voice cracking with the weight of his words. I can't be part of this. I won't let you destroy everything. Carol's expression hardened, her cold eyes narrowing as she took a step closer. You think you have a choice, Jake? You think you can just walk away from this? You're already bound to us. The moment you gave us food, the moment you let us in, you chose. You chose to be part of this. Jake's knees trembled, his vision blurring as the tension reached its breaking point. He had no escape. He could see it now, the truth behind everything. The bond he had unwittingly formed with them, the power they had over him, the choices he had already made without even realizing it. It was all part of their plan, from the very beginning. And yet, something inside him fought back. No, Jake said, his voice stronger now, even in the face of overwhelming power. You can't control me. I choose who I am. And I won't let you use me. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. Carol's gaze locked onto him, and the intensity of the moment sent a chill through his bones. But then, something shifted. A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of Carol's lips. You think you still have control, Jake? She said softly, almost pityingly. That's the beauty of this. You never had control. Not really. You were always meant to make this choice, to be the key to what comes next. And now, you've sealed your fate. With those words, Jake felt the ground beneath him tremble. A low, vibrating hum filled the air, and the ships in the sky began to descend, casting long, dark shadows across the earth. He could hear the sound of metal scraping against metal, the sound of the world being reshaped by forces far beyond his comprehension. Carol's voice was the last thing he heard before everything went dark. Welcome to the new world, Jake. The world exploded into chaos. Jake staggered back, his vision swirling as the first of the alien ships touched down. The ground shook with the force of their landing, sending cracks through the earth. Jake couldn't breathe. The very air around him seemed to warp, as though the laws of nature were bending under the weight of the invasion. But then, in that moment of pure terror, something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped forward, standing between him and her mother. Her glowing eyes locked onto Carol. No, she said, her voice filled with something Jake had never heard from her before: defiance. This isn't what we promised him. This isn't the future we should be creating. Carol's eyes flickered, the icy expression faltering for a split second. What are you saying, Lyra? Lyra turned to Jake, her eyes filled with a fierce determination. I didn't want this, she said, her voice shaking but resolute. I didn't want to take over. I wanted to find a way to save my people, without destroying yours. Jake stared at her, disbelief flooding through him. For the first time since their meeting, Lyra didn't seem like an alien invader. She seemed ... human. And in that moment, Jake understood. There was still hope. There was still a chance to fight. "I don't know how we can stop this," Lyra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'll help you. I'll help us. We can't let her destroy everything. Not this way." Jake's pulse quickened. The choice had never been clearer. He could join Karel, embrace the power she offered, and become part of a future ruled by conquest. Or he could fight back, even if it meant going against everything they had built, and in doing so, risk everything he had ever known. The moment was now. The final choice. With a deep breath, Jake stepped forward, his decision made. "No," he said, his voice strong, his heart filled with a new sense of purpose. "I won't be part of this. I won't let you destroy everything. I won't let you win." The battle for the future had just begun.